Hey everybody, welcome to the Leek. I'm John as always, and it's time for the red set review. We're getting there. Tomorrow we've got green, and then we're gonna split the gold cards and the rest, the artifacts and land, into two because there's a good chunk of them. There are, of course, a few disclaimers for this set review that you should know by now. If you don't, go back and look at the white, blue, and black ones. But let's take a look at the first card. Up first, we have a Braid. A Braid is 1 and a red for an instant at uncommon. It says, choose one. A Braid deals 3 damage to target creature, or destroy target artifact. Lightning Strike, Searing Spear is totally fine, and while losing the reach of hitting a player is something, it's not a big enough problem to really downgrade this all that much. Getting the added versatility of just killing a really problematic artifact, if it happens to be there, is really nice. It probably won't come up very much, but still, instant speed, 3 damage for 2 is fine, and an easy B for me. I will first pick this in packs that are kind of lacking in the bomb department. Blur of Blades is up next. Blur of Blades is 1 and a red for an instant at common. Put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. Blur of Blades deals 2 damage to that creature's controller. I think this reads a lot better than it actually is. It's 2 mana. It deals kind of 1 damage to a creature, but in the form of a counter, so it sticks around, I guess. And 2 damage to my opponent, which is cool, but I wouldn't really pay for that. Being a counter is nicer than doing 1 damage, that's for sure, but I think this is something that I'd probably play in sealed just because I have no choice. I opened really bad removal and still want to play red. I'm going to probably avoid this the vast majority of the time in draft. Might side it in if I see a whole lot of X1s or something, but 2 mana for 1 counter, not much. So C- for me. I'm going to cut it pretty liberally. Burning Fist Minotaur is up next. Burning Fist Minotaur is 1 and a red for a creature Minotaur Wizard at uncommon. He's a 2/1, he's got first strike. Pay 1 and a red and discard a card. Burning Fist Minotaur gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So this reminds me a lot of Aether Chaser. It's a 2 mana, 2/1 first striker. It doesn't make a 1/1 like Aether Chaser did, but you know, you can pay some mana, discard a card, and suddenly it's a 4/1 first striker. That seems really good. It's a really nice aggressive 2-drop that's nowhere near as being busted as something like Blood Rage Brawler, which I'm quite glad of. It seems like a very solid C+. I'm always going to play it. I'm going to pick it kind of high mid pack. Yeah, seems real good. I like it. I like it quite a bit. C+. Well, they can't all be good cards. Up next is Chandra's Defeat. Chandra's Defeat is a single red mana for an instant at uncommon. Chandra's Defeat deals 5 damage to target red creature or red planeswalker. If that permanent is a Chandra planeswalker, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Like Liliana's, this is a little bit better because 99% of the time it's going to be a 1 mana removal spell. In this case, instant speed. You know, because red creatures typically don't have 5 toughness or more. That being said, it's a defeat card. It's a color hoser against 1 single color. You do not main deck this. It sits in your sideboard. You pick it really late, and if you end up against a red deck, you slam it into your deck after game 1, and you feel real good about it. So D+. Don't main deck them. Chaos Maw is up next. Chaos Maw is 5 red for a creature Hellion at rare. It's a 6/6. When Chaos Maw enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each other creature. All of them, yours included. So it's a 7 mana 6/6 with a symmetrical burn effect. Not terribly into it. Odds are that in a red X deck, this is killing a serious amount of your stuff, and hopefully your opponent's stuff. There's just going to be so many situations where a couple of 4/4s live, and this card is just a waste of 7 mana. In red, a color that doesn't typically ever plan to get to 7 mana, even in most slow formats for that matter. I think this is just going to be fairly mediocre. I'm going to start it real low at a C+. I think you play it in sealed, and you know, unless your deck is like really well-tuned aggro, you probably still play it in draft, but you do not go out of your way to play this. You do not spend a first pick on this. This should be way more like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th pick, and it should be cut in a number of decks. So C+, no higher. Probably it'll be lower than that, to be honest, though. Crash Through is up next. Crash Through is a single red mana for a sorcery at common. Creatures you control gain trample until end of turn. Draw a card. I don't want to spend an entire card on this effect. It replaces itself, but still, it just doesn't seem worth it to me. The scenario where this does something super impactful is pretty rare, I think, so I'm going to just avoid playing this. I think it's just a straight D. If you're red-green and you have a bunch of gigantic things, this can maybe be the reach that you need to just attack in and trample over. But as we'll see tomorrow, there's an infinitely better card for that than this. So D for me. I don't think I'm going to play this very much, if at all. Defiant Khenra is up next. Defiant Khenra is 1 and a red for a creature Jackal Warrior at common, and it's a 2/2, and that's it. Yeah, if white is not getting vanilla bears and all the bears are better than vanilla bears, red is now getting just straight up vanilla bears, as it has for a few sets now. This is fine. This is a definition of a C. If you need a creature, here you go, and you're not going to feel bad about it. And if you have better ones, cut this, and you're not going to feel bad about it. It's a middle-of-the-road C. It's as plain can be. Earthshaker Khenra is up next. Earthshaker Khenra is 1 and a red for a creature Jackal Warrior at rare for a 2/1. It has haste. When Earthshaker Khenra enters the battlefield, target creature with power less than or equal to Earthshaker Khenra's power can't block this turn. Eternalize for 4 red. And no discard. I checked. I don't think there's any more random discard ones, which I have to say is really bad design to randomly have that restriction thrown in, squished in between the reminder text and the eternalized text. So many people are going to miss that and play those 2 cards without discarding. Anyways, Earthshaker Khenra looks really good. It's a hasty bear. If you play it on curve, it's probably unblockable, which is very solid. After that, you just have a piker, which isn't the best, but you know, it still has an okay-ish chance getting through in the first few turns of the game, even though it's not on curve. Coming back late in the game as a hasty 4/4 that probably can't be blocked is a pretty serious thing. But it is a thing that your opponent's going to know is coming several turns in advance. So ultimately, I can't really see this being higher than a B. And I think I'm actually going to go slightly down to a B- just because it is a 2/1 to start. It's fine. I would absolutely never not play it. I don't think I'm going to slam first pick it and assume that I just won the tournament, but it is still going to be a relatively high pick. So I'm going to start at B-. We'll see. It probably has the potential to go up to a B, and I don't think it'll go down to a C+ at all. Fervent Paincaster is up next. Fervent Paincaster is 2 and a red for a creature human wizard at uncommon. She's a 3/1. Tap, Fervent Paincaster deals 1 damage to target player. Tap, Exert Fervent Paincaster. It deals 1 damage to target creature. Pingers are typically criminally underrated. They are not to be trifled with. A damage a turn guaranteed will kill opponents off. Getting to pick off X1s, making combat a nightmare, etc. every other turn is a fantastic bonus. This just seems like a solid include in basically every red deck. Maybe it's only slightly less good than it would be due to the number of -1/-1 counters that are running around, but this still just seems very good. Probably not quite a first pick in many packs, but real good, and I'm going to go with a solid B. Next up is Finebrand Archer. Finebrand Archer is 1 and a red for a creature human archer at common. She's a 2/1. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Finebrand Archer deals 1 damage to each opponent. Piker's okay. It's not spectacular. It's really filler level if there's not something else going on with it. This does have something else going on with it, and it's not much. A single point of damage that's not repeatable every single turn guaranteed is not going to be appreciable enough, unlike a pinger. This is a far cry from Gutter Snipe, which was 1 more mana for a 2/2 that did 2 damage every time you cast a non-creature spell. This really seems like middle-of-the-road filler and only ever so slightly better if you're in the spells deck, but this is still even nowhere near something like a Warfire Javelineer or a Lightning whatchamacallit from Shadows. It's not quite there. I'm going with a C, maybe even a C-. Frontline Devastator is up next. It's 3 and a red for a creature zombie Minotaur Warrior. It's an Eternal. It's a common 3/3. It has Afflict 2, as Eternals are apt to have. Pay 1 and a red. Frontline Devastator gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Expensive fire breathing for some reason. Seems fine to me. It's not outstanding, but it's a nice aggressive creature that you can still get in for 2, even if your opponent has a chump blocker or even just for some reach. Your opponent's at 2 in your board stall? Whatever, they're dead now. The expensive fire breathing doesn't mean a thing to me. Paying 2 mana for +1/+0 is just not something you typically do. You know, if you have nothing else to do and you can get through for an extra point of damage, sure. But do every other thing you possibly can before you do that. It's fine. It's a middle-of-the-road C for me. It's totally filler level. Play it, don't play it. You'll be fine either way. Up next is Gilded Ceradon. Gilded Ceradon is 4 and a red for a creature beast at common. It's a 4/4. Whenever Gilded Ceradon attacks, if you control a desert or there is a desert card in your graveyard, target creature can't block this turn. It's a 4/4 for 5, which is, you know, slightly expensive, especially when we're getting 5/5s for 5 in this set. Having to play a desert in your deck, though, most of which come in tapped, or you have to spend life, or you have to cycle it. Yeah, you know, so we'll talk about deserts in a couple of days when we get there, but I just don't expect you to be playing several of them. One, sure. There's a bunch of them that if I have a free pick, basically, or if they're in my sealed pool, yeah, I'll throw them in my deck. But having a card in your deck is not enough to say that you're enabling this mechanic. If I have Drakehaven and I have one cycling card, I'm not going off with Drakehaven. If I have one desert card in my deck, or even 2 for that matter, I have to draw them and play them or cycle them in an extremely specific order, namely first, before my Desert Matters cards go off. And that's the kind of consistency that I just don't think you can rely on in Limited. And so that's why I'm really rating all of these Desert Matters cards as though it's a cool upside if you get it, but never expect it. Because if you have this in your hand, then you're at 5 mana. Are you just not going to play it and wait until you hit that one desert in your library that you haven't seen yet? No, you're just going to play this, because it would be dumb not to. So anyways, this is, for me, a vanilla 4/4 for 5, which is not really what Red ever wants to do. Ever. That's expensive. For 5 mana, you need some sort of really good effect. If you get the effect, then that's cool. Although target creature can't block this turn gets much less good, you know, in turn 6 or 7 or 8 or whenever this actually attacks. But I don't know. You guys know me. I don't like large amounts of variance or inconsistency. I don't like playing cards that require other cards to be good. So I'm going to put this at a C. I'm going to put it at filler level. If you have no deserts, I think you just don't play this. And, you know, if you have 1 or 2... I think you can play it, but boy, I don't like playing cards that require the other card in my deck to be good. So, C to start. Granitic Titan is up next. Granitic Titan is 4 red for a creature elemental at common. It's a 5/4 with menace and cycling for 2 generic mana. Yeah. 6 mana for a 5/4 menace. That's pretty nice for most decks, for most red decks. It dies to a pair of bears, which isn't great. Cycling 2 is cool and all. Ultimately, I think this is probably going to be around a Desert Ceradon level of sort of, I need a card. Here's a card. So I think I'm going to start at a kind of C level. I'm going to cut it if I have anything better, and if I have to play it, I have to play it. But it's a little bit expensive for, you know, kind of a hyper aggro deck, so be careful with that. Middle of the road C. Hazoret's Undying Fury is up next. This is the next of the God Cycles, and surprise, surprise, Hazoret's not dead, interestingly. Unlike the rest of the gods, Hazoret's Undying Fury is 4 red for a sorcery at rare. Shuffle your library, then exile the top 4 cards. You may cast any number of non-land cards with converted mana cost 5 or less from among them without paying their mana costs. Land you control don't untap during your next untap step, so this does virtually cost 12 mana. This is way too Hearthstone for me. This could literally be 6 mana, do nothing. This could be 6 mana, 4 lands. Or land, pump spell with no target, land. Or useless target. The odds of getting 6 mana worth of value out of this or more just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I feel like that's a way better than average scenario. It is slightly better since you're kind of drawing those cards, but no. I don't go for this level of variance. I'm not touching this. This is a straight up F for me. Well, let's follow that up with Hour of Devastation, the name of the set. It has a card. 3 red for a sorcery at rare. All creatures lose indestructible until end of turn. Hour of Devastation deals 5 damage to each creature and each non-bolus planeswalker. So this is a 5 mana, probably Wrath. Seems okay-ish, though we've already talked about how I'm not super into Wraths in Limited when they start to get this expensive. The downside of being in red is that you're probably killing most, if not all, your creatures with this, unless you're in red-green and you've got some 6-power creatures kicking around, perhaps. Ultimately, I think this probably lives maybe a little bit more in the sideboard still, or in kind of the build-around category. I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to play this. It's just a very weird weird include in red. It's one of these wraths, it's one of these board wipes where you have to wait maybe a little bit too long to blow everything up and then start rebuilding the board. So I'm going to start this at a D+. I don't think I'm going to take it if I have the option pack one, pick one. I think the format's going to have to slow down maybe a little bit too much for this to really be overly playable, and I don't, as much as I want to, I don't think the format's going to slow down that much. I think we're going to have to wait until Ixalan to maybe get there. So yeah, we'll start this at D+. If the format does slow down, or if you very explicitly build around this, in other words, having maybe a creature or two that holds the ground for a little bit, sandbagging, having your opponent overexert themselves, and then wiping the board, maybe it works out, but 5 mana, I mean, it's better than 6, but it's asking you to spend a little bit too long just getting hit in the face. So D+ for me to start. Imminent Doom is up next. I'm going to say the word Doom an awful lot here. Imminent Doom is 2 and a red for an enchantment at rare. Imminent Doom enters the battlefield with a Doom counter on it. Whenever you cast a spell with converted mana cost equal to the number of Doom counters on Imminent Doom deals that much damage to target creature or player. Then put a Doom counter on Imminent Doom. Ugh. This card does nothing. It does literally stone nothing. It's the definition of an F-. This should be last pick. There is no excuse to ever take this card. It's a 3 mana do nothing enchantment. Awful, right there. Then if you cast a 1-drop on turn 4 or later, where you're probably not really wanting to cast a 1-drop, you get to deal 1 damage to your opponent. You spent 3 mana and a turn, 4 mana technically, to do a damage. And then you get to do 2 if you do a 2-drop on turn 6 or 7 or whatever we're on now. Just F-. Do not play this card. Ever. Inferno Jet is up next. Inferno Jet is 5 and a red for a sorcery at uncommon. Inferno Jet deals 6 damage to target opponent. Cycle for 2 generic mana. So this is basically Lava Axe. Lava Axe costs 1 less than this and does 5 damage to an opponent. Doesn't have cycling. These are not great. People love to look at this and go, holy crap, this is like a quarter of my opponent's life total. For 1 card, I just, boom, 6 damage to them. That's not that good. Unless it's ending the game, it's not doing enough. And certainly not for 6 mana, which red just does not want to plan to get to generally. Yeah, this card is just real bad. The cycling helps it out ever so slightly, but still not enough for me to ever want to play Inferno Jet. I'm going to put it at a D+. Just because, yes, it can end the game, but you really should not be playing this. I'm going to lose to it, it's going to suck, and it's not going to be correct for my opponent to have played it in their deck. D+. Alright, Khenra Scrapper's up next. Khenra Scrapper is 2 and a red for a creature Jackal Warrior at common. It's 2/3 menace. You may exert Khenra Scrapper as it attacks. When you do, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. 2/3 menace for 3 is fine. I strongly prefer 3/2 for 3 like a Cursed Minotaur, but Aetherborn, whatchamacallit from Kaladesh or Aether Revolt was fine enough. Being able to attack as a 4/3 menace, though, every other turn is real nice. This will slot into an aggressive red deck real nice. I think slightly above fillerish levels at the C+ level. I think you'll always play one of these if you are being an aggressive red deck. If you're maybe going a little bit later game, like a red-green stompy kind of thing, this maybe goes down to like a C filler level, but let's put this at a C+. Kindled Fury is a reprint. We've seen this card a couple of times before. Single red mana for an instant at common. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. This is a solid little combat trick. Getting first strike and the 1 extra power typically means that your creature just flat out lives, and that's pretty darn good. It's not amazing. You don't pick this anywhere before the middle of the pack, but it's a fine C combat trick. It's not one of the premier ones that surprise on taps or etc., but it's just fine. C. Magmaroth is 3 and a red for a creature elemental at uncommon. It's a 5/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a -1/-1 counter on Magmaroth. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, remove a -1/-1 counter from Magmaroth. So it's a 5/5, but by the time you attack with it, it's probably a 4/4 that you spent 4 on. That's totally vanilla and fine. Then it slowly shrinks until it dies. Unless you place spells, non-creature spells, you stop affecting the board in a frantic attempt to keep it a relevant size. Sounds like just way too much work for me. Maybe if it was 3 mana, and you got a turn with it kind of feeling above curve, but barely being on curve or worse just isn't good enough for me. I'm at C- on this. I'll cut it more and more aggressively the fewer spells that I have. In the blue-red spells deck, it's probably just okay. At that point, it's what? A vanilla 5/5? It's not great. So C- for me. I'm going to cut this way more often than I actually play it. Manticore Eternal is the next card here. It's 3 red for a creature zombie Manticore at uncommon. It's a 5/4, afflict 3. Manticore Eternal attacks each combat if able. Yeah, are you playing a 5-mana 5/4 and not attacking every turn? It's not really that much of a downside. Plus your opponent's taking 5, or they're chumping it or trading with it and taking 3. Both of which are totally fine scenarios. It's a real minimal downside of this being double red, but whatever. This just seems like a quite solid kind of curve topper in an aggressive deck. I'll take this decently highly in most packs. B-. Well, time for a big bad Eternal. We've got Neheb the Eternal. Neheb is back. 3 red for legendary creature zombie minotaur warrior at Mythic. Neheb is a 4/6 with afflict 3, and at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add red to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. Keep in mind, damage is life loss. Neheb got pretty buff in his afterlife form after joining the Bolas Blue Man Group army. A 4/6 for 5 is fine. Getting in for 3 if it's blocked or 4 if it's not, real solid. And then fueling you dumping out the rest of your hand is just great. Neheb seems like just a snap first pick to me. Solid A+. I think Neheb is going to be one of the better rares or mythics in the set, as far as limited goes. Open Fire is up next. Open Fire is 2 red for an instant at common. Open Fire deals 3 damage to target creature or player. First a Braid, now Open Fire. The red burn in this set is looking really good. Nice and instant speed and not costing a super large amount of money. This one costing 1 more to hit players is fine by me. Sure, it's a far cry from Lightning Bolt and even from Searing Spear for that matter, but this is still an easy high pick and first pickable in some weaker packs. Straight up B for me. Puncturing Blow is up next. It's 2 red for a sorcery at common. Puncturing Blow deals 5 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So even more burn. Sorcery speed hurts this a little bit, and double red hurts it a little bit as well, but it's still nearly unconditional removal for a pretty large segment of the set. Plus, it eliminates Eternalize or Embalm value. I'll take this decently highly, maybe even first pick in super weak packs. Definitely within the first few picks. I would take an Abrade over it. I'd take a Puncturing Blow over it. Sorry, it is Puncturing Blow. I'd take an Open Fire over it. But it's still pretty darn good. I'm going to go with a B- on it. Sand Strangler is up next. Sand Strangler is 3 red for a creature beast at uncommon. It's a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, if you control a desert or there is a desert card in your graveyard, you may have Sand Strangler deal 3 damage to target creature. Sand Strangler is another of these Desert Matrix cards. I think it's a 3/3 for 4 way too much of the time. 1 desert in no way guarantees that you're ever going to have this actually turn on. 2 deserts probably doesn't guarantee that you're going to turn this on. At 3 deserts, I think you're just expecting way too much as far as consistency goes in draft and in sealed. So I'm gonna continue to be super duper cautious on these Desert Matters cards, especially the ones that trigger once. Like, you have to have the desert where it needs to be when you play this. It's slightly easier like the Gilded Ceradon, where it's something that repeats every turn, or it's just an ability that turns on. That gets a little bit better. Still, this is a 3/3 for 4, so it's not unplayable or anything, but I'm just going to go middle of the road C, I think, unless you are actually playing 3 or more deserts, in which case it goes up to like a C+, because it probably just kills a creature. Our second last red card is Thorned Moloch. Thorned Moloch is 2 red for a creature lizard at common. It's a 2/2 with prowess. Thorned Moloch has first strike as long as it's attacking. Seems like a fine C+. It's a 2/2 for 2 that attacks as a first striker, which is nice. That's great, although I prefer 2/1 first strikers for 2, like the Minotaur that we saw earlier. But yeah, the potential of pumping it up is going to make combat an absolute nightmare. It's no better than a C+, but it is a solid C+ that I'll probably just always play. Our final red card is Wildfire Eternal. Wildfire Eternal is 3 red for a creature zombie jackal cleric. really looks like a Minotaur, but I guess it's a Jackal. It's at rare. It's a 1/4 with Afflict 4. Whenever Wildfire Eternal attacks and isn't blocked, you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost. This is kind of a hilarious. It's a 1/4 for 4, which is awful. And getting to cast a free, non-permanent spell if your opponent takes 1? Awesome, but you all know my prowess argument. You're not playing that many instants and sorceries unless you're in the instants and sorceries deck. And even there, a lot of those instants and sorceries are, you know, relatively middling, I would argue. If this cast maybe a non-creature spell so you could get enchantments and artifacts and stuff off of it, I think I'd probably be a little bit more into it. Realistically, you're just not casting much off of this. Since it's not on damage, it does mean that you can cast a free pump spell on it, for example, but that still isn't as consistent an effect as I would like. If I'm playing against an opponent and they play this, I'm probably just going to let it through every single time. Now, very explicitly in that blue-red spells deck, if it still exists in this format, and I'm not positive that it's going to, then this would certainly be better in that very one specific deck. But in an average deck, I think this is like a C+. It's a 1/4 for 4, which is just so bloody expensive. That's twice a Dune Beetle. The Afflict 4 doesn't really matter if your opponent's just letting you get in for 1 each turn. That takes 4 turns to match 1 turn of it being blocked. So, I don't know. I don't think it's that great. I will start it at a C+. I definitely see the potential there, but I think this is going to lead people into best case scenario mentality a little bit too much. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for Red. Red seems hilariously split between real aggressive and real bad, like Hazard's Undying Fury and Imminent Doom and etc. So I don't know how it's going to go. There's some cards that I'm super excited about. I would love to play a Neheb. Boy, would I love to play on Neheb. And this much burn excites me. A Braid and Open Fire and Puncturing Blow combined with Black's removal, combined with Unsummon. I feel like the potential for the set to slow down is there. I do worry that those tools maybe just make the aggressive deck even more able to get through. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Hour of Devastation. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite cards are, what you're looking forward to playing with, what you agree with, what you disagree with. Chat amongst yourselves. That, of course, is the reason that I do these set reviews, is to encourage discussion. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at TheManaLeek. That's L-E-E-K, like the vegetable, not the card. You can also find me at Facebook.com/TheManaLeek, Twitch.tv/TheManaLeek, and Patreon.com/TheManaLeek if you want to help keep the channel going there. As always, click that thumbs up button if you like the content. It helps new people find the content. If you're new, hi, welcome. Click subscribe if you want to see more. We have set reviews all week, plus pre-release content and release content and regularly scheduled weekly content. All kinds of content. But if you do have those questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you all tomorrow for the green set review.